Great. A bit of an introduction. Eric is a filmmaker and a photographer. He presented a program in smartphone photography to the Western Wisconsin Photography Club 4 or 5 years ago. And this is a follow-up that's going to focus on editing the smartphone pictures in your phone with Snapseed. Take a look at Eric's webpage. It's in the invite. He's got some amazing images. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you and I'll shut up.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thanks for everybody. I'm glad to be here with you tonight. Steve, I just have one question. Do you see people, are you still a co-host? Do you see people coming into the waiting room, or do I need to be admitting everybody? All right, I did. So yeah, welcome. So I've got most of what we're doing tonight is going to be, sorry, it would be three things. It'd be a presentation, demonstration, and then kind of an edit along, which is, I find kind of one of the best ways to learn about editing. So let's get started. All right. So my name is Eric Mueller, and we're going to talk about editing photos on your phone tonight. I am an artist, photographer, and teacher, and I live here in Minneapolis. I'm on Instagram at Eric Mueller, and I'm on Facebook at Eric Mueller Photography if you're a Facebook user. My website is ericmuellerphotography.com, and everything that you see today will be shot and edited on an iPhone, unless it says in the bottom right-hand corner. Sorry about that. It's hard to manage the letting people in and doing the lecture at the same time. I have been recognized for a number of mobile photography awards, from the Mobile Photo Awards and the iPhone Photography Awards and the Mira Mobile Prize. These are some photos that I have been recognized with, either by honorable mention or by winning first place. I was profiled on TPT several years ago on a show that they had called Minnesota Original. There is, and it's about a 7-minute segment, and it kind of talks about my journey into photography. My dad was a photographer, and so I grew up with photography, but I worked for about 25 years in film and video and advertising until I decided to become a full-time photographer about 8 years ago. Just took me a long time to sort of realize what I did, come back to what my dad did. And the reason I kind of came back to photography was because of Instagram, and that's what is in this video here. I have done a couple of long-term personal projects. The first one I'm going to talk about right now is called Family Resemblance. It was a project where I photographed people who are genetically related and bear a strong resemblance to each other. I'm adopted and don't look like anybody else in my family, so I've always found it fascinating when people do look alike. I photographed around 700 people over the course of 3 years, which culminated in a book that came out right at the very beginning of the pandemic, which is not a great time to release a book, but that's okay. And there's also a website, which is just familyresemblance.com. And then my most recent project was one I did last year. It was a photo a day project, which you've probably heard of before, where you just make a photo every day. I'm not Jim Brandenburg. I didn't make one photo a day, only one, and then share one. I shot thousands of photos, but only shared one photo per day for the project. It's my third time I've done one of these projects, and they're great exercise, great creative exercise for photographers. So they force you to be creative every day. I felt very fortunate because as a week after the project wrapped up, it was exhibited at the Minnesota Marine Art Museum in Winona, where the curator picked out 52 photos, one for each week of the project, and they were in their museum there, which is a fantastic museum if you haven't been there. I have this photo in there because the one on the right there, the little I shot the state fair. That's an iPhone photograph. A handful of the photographs were shot with my iPhone. Otherwise, I shoot with a Sony system. So that's me as an artist, as a photographer. I do a lot of headshots. Everybody needs headshots. And I do some commercial work. This is for the Yarnery knitting store in St. Paul. And I do some architectural photography, both residential and commercial. I mostly teach at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, which is pretty far from Western Wisconsin, but many of the classes are online. In fact, the editing class that I teach, which is it's 2.5 hour evenings, 2 hours a Tuesday, Thursday, that is taught online. So you can, if you want to if this was interesting, you want to learn more about Snapseed and a couple other editing apps, you could take that class. All that information is available on the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum website. I just finished my last class there for the spring. They don't teach a lot of classes in the summer, so it's nice because I'm kind of off now until the fall. And that's their URL. So before we get into Snapseed, I want to just talk a little bit about how should we edit our photos, because that's something that it's one thing to know how to edit, how to mechanically know how to edit, but of course, photography is a combination of artistry and creativity and technology. I guess it's kind of the best way to say it, right? And so, even though we know how to might know how to do things technically, we also need to learn how to do things creatively. So I'll just kind of talk to you like what my process is. It's pretty simple. Whenever I look at a photo, I always want to ask myself two questions, which is, what do I like about this photo and how do I augment that? And what do I dislike about this photo and how do I diminish that? I do a lot of editing on my photos. I am not a photojournalist, so I don't feel bound by the rules of photojournalism, where you can basically just kind of crop your photo and not much more beyond that. Some of my photos are heavily edited, and sometimes they're just kind of as they were. But for the most part, I'm always trying to present a slightly different version of reality in my photos than was in the real world. Something that's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more beautiful. That's one of my goals, is to try to present as much beauty as I can. So I'll just go through a couple of examples here. These were all shot and edited on my phone. So here's a photo that I shot at the Minneapolis Public Library downtown. What I like about this photo is I like the volume of space that's shown there. I like how there's a little tiny person down at the bottom, and that kind of helps us also show scale in the space. I like that it shows depth. There's kind of this feeling of depth there.
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're not sharing, we see your desktop, it appears, but we're not seeing the pictures that you're talking about.
Oh, I've been talking this whole time and no one's been able to see my deck?
Well, we see the kind of your homepage, it seems like, but
we can.
So you don't see that
desktop?
All right, I'm so sorry. Thank you for saying something. Let me fix this, you guys.
now we see some architecture.
Awesome. So I'll just briefly just back up. These are the classes that I teach, and yeah, well, I'm not going to go back and go everything. I'm so sorry that you guys didn't see all that, but thank you for telling me. So how do we edit our photos? I always try to figure out, what do I like about this photo and how do I augment that, and what do I dislike and how do I diminish it? So in this photo, as I was saying, I like the volume of space. I like the scale of it. I like the symmetry or the depth of the photo. Things I dislike about this photo is the mixed color temperature. Our eyes, of course, see color temperature very differently than a camera records it, because our brains are so good at processing different color temperatures and mixing them, showing them as one. Steve, can you let the people into the room, because I can't actually do that when I'm in presentation.
Working on it here, yes.
Can people still see my deck?
No.
Probably I reclaimed
Yeah.
hosts.
Yeah. So
so-
Steve, I think you can make us co-hosts and then we can both have administrative duties rather than just
Mhm.
switching us back and forth between being two different hosts. I think if you go into participants and then you go by my name and then more, I think you'd be able to make me co-host.
Okay, working on it. Says make host. Well, it doesn't give me that option. It says make host. So I'm going to make you host again for the moment.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I can't see chat either. I see now people in the chat were saying they couldn't see it. So I can't see chat when I'm presenting. Sorry about that, everybody. So what should we do? Should I just pick up where I was or should I just start all over so people can see everything? What would people prefer?
I'd encourage you to keep going.
Okay.
And you'll need to share again.
Yep. All right, we're good now? People can see that photo?
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody. So here's how I edited the photo, where as you can see, I augmented the feeling of depth by increasing the brightness in the center and kind of darkening around the edges. If I back up, you can see I also like cleaned up some of the things in the photo. Like at the very bottom, there's that circle and there's kind of a person, actually a statue in the very lower center, and I got rid of that as well. And then I made the photo black and white to kind of take care of the color temperature issues that were there. So here's another photo that I shot. I saw this person on this escalator and I was very excited to see this woman in this red coat going up this escalator. And so I got my phone out of my pocket as quickly as I could and shot the photo. You know, what I like about it is that it's a pretty simple photo. And I always, I'm trying to make my photos be as simple as possible. I feel like the aesthetics of photography have changed a little bit because we're now like viewing our photos on these smaller devices rather than on a larger screen. And so I feel like mobile photos need to be simpler in my opinion. So I like the kind of simple color palette. I like the simple composition. What I don't really like is that the person, she's a little bit dark in the photo. She was much brighter in my mind's eye. And then I don't really like that it's crooked. Let me see here. If I can't actually let anybody in the room, unfortunately, Steve. Can you just disable the waiting room? Can I just disable the waiting room? Let me try that.
Yeah, go ahead.
There, okay. So when I edited the photo, I obviously straightened it out. I cropped in a little bit to kind of simplify because I didn't think we needed all the railing that was there. And I brightened up her coat because I was just trying to make people be able to see her in that spot of color right away. This is in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., the East Building by I.M. What I like about this photo is, again, kind of the sense of scale that's there. This is at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, this willow sculpture. I like that there's that person there who kind of gives some sense of scale to the piece. I like the piece itself, and I like kind of this muted color palette. You know, it's not a black and white photo, but it has very few little color information in it already. What I dislike is You can see there's like some signs on the sculpture that say area closed because it was during the height of the pandemic when they wouldn't allow people in this sculpture. Now you can go in it. And I don't really like that behind one of those stacks, there's like a windmill. You can see a little windmill weather vane coming out the side. I don't really love the color palette either, even though it's minimal. So in editing, I can just clean up the around the to get rid of that weather vane. I can kind of decrease the contrast in the foreground to kind of de-emphasize that fact the snow wasn't nice, all smooth and perfect. And get rid of the signs that are there and just kind of brighten up and adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of clarity to that sculpture to kind of make us be able to enjoy those willow branches a little bit more. Last example I'm going to share with you. This is taken in downtown Minneapolis from the Hennepin County public building from the very top floor. This is looking over 6th Street because they're still building the Viking Stadium at this point in time. By the way, this view's gone. They've now built a wall in the library there so you can't actually shoot this anymore. So I'm glad I got there when I did. What I like about this photo is, again, kind of this sense of depth. You can see I do a lot of one-point perspective in my photos. I like the sense of scale you get from the tiny cars and the big buildings. I like those rays of light that are kind of coming down there. What I really don't like is, the photo looks really drab, and perhaps the biggest sin of this photo is that there's no main subject, right? There's no clear main subject. It's not really clear what you should even be looking at, which is something I try to emphasize in my classes, that you should have a clear main subject for your photos. So in editing, I can make the photo be black and white to kind of get rid of that drabness. I can brighten up that street there to emphasize it and make that 6th Street become the main subject of my photo. I can emphasize those rays in the background and kind of darken everything else so that it really becomes this vertical shaft of light going up 6th Street. My idea was it was supposed to look like the street was maybe a little bit wet and the light was reflecting off of it from the sky in the background. So that's just the simple process that I go through on all my photos. I sometimes feel like I just get started into editing and then I realize like I'm having fun, but I'm not really moving toward a goal. And so then I'll back up and kind of rethink what I'm doing. Even though I presented all of these as like a linear path, as like, oh, you go from A to B, that's usually not how I edit. I usually start with A and then I go to B and then I go maybe down to F and G and I fool around a little bit till where I'm supposed to going. It's much more of an organic process with me till I find out what the photo wants to be at that point. Let's talk a little bit about editing with Snapseed now. So what I like about it is that it's easy to use, it's very powerful, has some built-in tutorials, it's free, and it's cross-platform. And by that I mean it's not available for your desktop, it is available for Android as well as iPhone phones. I just want to kind of acquaint you with the basics of Snapseed here, and then, like I say, I'll do a demonstration, then we can do some editing together. When you launch the app, there's 3 main menu options. They're at the bottom: Looks, Tools, and Export. Tools is where we'll spend most of our time today, talking about the various tools that are there. Looks are recipes of pre-programmed tools combined to make a specific look. So I usually talk about looks a little bit later because you first need to know what the tools are. These are what some of the tools are available in Snapseed. There are quite a few. It's pretty powerful in the things that it can do. And then this is Export, where you can, I usually recommend that people create a new version of the photo and just leave the original version intact in case you want to go back with it to it later on. So I'm actually going to be teaching from my iPad here, in part because it's a horizontal screen and it stands up, and then I can use my mouse on it as well. So if you turn Snapseed to the side, you'll see that you lose those 3 words, but they're still there. They just have icons for them for Looks, Tools, and Export. There are a lot of online resources available for Snapseed. Both the iPhone Photography School and Mobiography have extensive tutorials on Snapseed. So I hope you will look at those up. Okay, let's switch over to my iPad now. So I hope everybody can see. Let me get my mouse off of it there. There, can everyone see that orange flowered backdrop?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just going to launch Snapseed here. Most of the things that I'll be able to do with my mouse when I'm doing some activities with Snapseed, I actually can't use the mouse. I have to use my finger, but I will tell you when that's happening. So I'm going to launch the app right now. And when you launch it, it's ready to bring in a photo. Snapseed can only have one photo in it at a time. Unlike some editing apps where they've got an internal library, you can have a bunch of photos there. In Snapseed, you work on one photo at a time, then you save it, then you bring in the next photo. To open it, you just can tap anywhere like it says, or tap on the up above here where it says open, and it will show you your most recent photos from your camera roll. I typically will go here to open from device, and then it'll either be, if it's not my most recent photo, then I might go to where I've saved it. In this case, I'm going to go here to my edit class and bring in one of the photos right here. It'll show you a preview of it, and then you can just click on use, and then it'll bring in the photo for you. As I was saying before, this little rainbow double arc thing here is our looks, and then here is our tools that are available to us. Before we get in there, though, I just want to show you a little bit of how Snapseed works. If you double tap on anything, it will zoom in. Double tap will bring it back out again. When you are zoomed in, you'll notice in the lower left here, there is a little white box with a blue box in it. And that blue box, the white box is the whole photo, and the blue box is what you're looking at right now. And I can drag this around, and it will help me navigate where I am in the photo. I can also use just 2 fingers and move it around with 2 fingers. If one finger won't do anything of it, but 2 fingers will allow me to move around. So to launch a tool, we'll just go here to tools, and we're going to go to the very first tool here, which is called Tune Image. The reason they put it first is because it's a great place to start. Now, when you first launch it, it's a little bit confusing because you're not even sure what you're looking at. So let me just kind of orient you guys. You'll see in the upper left here, it says brightness. It's got the number 0 by it. And then there's this thing here that says adjust and auto adjust and a check mark and an X mark. And a couple of things we'll talk about a little bit later. So the way Snapseed works is it's very intuitive. You just use your finger, and I'm just going to rub my finger to the right like that. So if I rub my finger to the right, you'll see, oh, well, the photo's getting brighter. And it actually says up here in the upper left now, it says brightness plus 100. And there's also, if it's not hidden by your zoom bar, there's also a little blue line at the very top. So you get 3 ways to know that you're changing this photo. You can visually see it. It says brightness, and you get the little blue bar there. So I can also bring it to the left. So just by sliding it, I'm just making this photo be brighter or darker, which is pretty simple and intuitive. But there's more tools that are available here in this first tool we're talking about, which is Tune Image. And to get those, you just tap here on Adjust. And you'll see like, oh, in addition to brightness, there's contrast, saturation, highlight, shadows, and warmth. Ambience is sort of a made-up term that Snapseed has, and I don't really use that. But presumably people are already familiar with what these things do. Contrast is just the relationship between lights and darks, and highlights and shadows are kind of the brother and sister that go along with brightness, right? Brightness affects the whole image, brighter or dark. Highlights and shadows, you can just affect those individually from one another. And warmth is simply yellow or blue. There's another part of the tool that allows you to do tint as well. So if I want to do something else, I can go here to contrast and just slide my finger to the right to add some contrast, or remove contrast. Same thing here with all the tools that are available. So a lot of times what I'm doing in my photos is I'm often will be bringing down the highlights a little bit, and I'm often bringing up the shadows a little bit. That's pretty standard procedure for me, and probably for a lot of you as well. When you're working on a photo, sometimes you can't really remember where you started. And in the upper right, you'll see there's this little rectangle with a vertical line in the middle of it. That's before and after. So if I hold it, it shows me before. If I let go, it shows me after. So all I've really done so far is just decrease those highlights and bring up those shadows a little bit. I shot this on auto white balance, which you don't really have a choice on an iPhone. That's what happens. And you can see like the white balance, it usually is pretty good, but it got a little bit fooled here, in part because it's this whitish brick of this house. So you look at their skin tones and they look a little bit blue. I can, if I want here, go down to Adjust and go to Warmth. and just slide it a little bit to the right and just bring up the warmth a little bit. I always like to err a little bit on the side of being a little bit too warm rather than too yellow if I'm going to make a mistake. So that's what we've done so far. We haven't made a ton of adjustments to it, but it makes a little bit of a difference. And hopefully even on Zoom, you can see it. If not, I will actually go here to brightness and I'll bring up the brightness a little bit too. And maybe I'll just add a little bit more contrast, make it a little bit clearer so you guys can see what's happening. Auto adjust here doesn't really work very well. I wouldn't use that. If I was unhappy with this, and I could just hit the check mark or the X mark in the bottom left, and I would go back to the home screen. But I'm happy with the changes that I've made, so I'm going to hit the check mark. And now we're back at the home screen, and we've done one thing. We've gone to this one tool and done a number of things there. Whenever I learn about how a new app works or a new piece of software, I always want to know how to undo because I'm always making mistakes and I always want to go back. So that is right here in the upper right. You'll see there's a couple of diamonds stacked on top of each other, then arrow pointing backwards. This is a pretty powerful thing, but for right now, all we're going to talk about is that it's got undo in it. And undo will just take me back to the original photo. And then redo will bring me right back to that first thing of edits. In this case, I'm going to undo, just go back to the original photo. And I'm just about the second tool now. So we'll go here now to our tools, and we're going to go to white balance. Just got the WB there. And this looks a little bit different still. We've still got our friend the sliders here, and it's got temperature and tint, which are pretty universal terms. Temperature is yellow, blue, tint is pink and green, magenta and green. In this case, I'm gonna try to guess what I think it should be. I'm gonna make it be a little bit warmer. Feels maybe a little bit green. I'm not sure. Make it a little bit pinker. I'll look at before and after. That looks pretty good to me. I can look and see what I did here on the slider. I did +10 and +6. I can also use the auto adjust here and see what it does. That's quite a bit warmer. That feels a little bit too warm to me, but I can start with the auto and then I can back it off a little bit. I don't have to just accept that auto the way it is. And then if I know I have something that's a neutral color, like a gray card or something that I know is absolutely black or white or gray, I can use this neutral color over the top of it. And whatever I put underneath that X, it'll say that it'll make white and then adjust all the colors according to that. In this case, though, I'm just going to go back here to auto adjust and bring that temperature down just a little bit. That seems a little bit too warm to me. Okay, so we're back at the home screen. So we did one thing, right? We did tune image, but then I undid all that and went back to the original photo. And then we went into white balance and we adjusted the white balance. You can do more than just one tool, though. You can stack tools on top of each other. So I'm going to do another tool right now. Go back here to tools, and I'm going to go here to this one in the second row here called rotate. And this is nice because it's got an auto rotate feature. So when I click on this, it's actually going to automatically rotate the photo for me. So let's just take a look at that. There, you see it moved it by 1.1%. You can see in the upper left there. If I was unhappy with that, I could just slide my finger on it and change it myself. But in this case, I feel like it did a pretty good job, and I'll just kind of get roughly back to where it was. This is not an architectural photo that I shot, so I'm not worried about the vertical lines being absolutely vertical in this, like I would if this were for a job. This was my friend and his son, and was just so happy that they're both smiling. So it's more a photo about that than it is about everything in the background being architecturally precise. You can also here, if you want, flip the image left and right if you had a reason to do that, as well as rotating it. So I'm gonna hit the check mark. So we're back at the home screen now, and again, we've done two things. We did the white balance, and then we did the rotate. So if I go back up to the undo now, the first one will undo the rotate, and then the second undo will undo the color temperature and bring us right back. I can redo those. And there's also the option to revert. So if I go here and I go to revert, it's going to say like, hey, we're going to go right back to where we started, and there's no way to get back to this. So I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to hit cancel right now. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and save the photo. So then I'm going to go to export, or the little rectangle with the arrow pointing out the top. And I always do save a copy here. And the reason why I'll tell you that a little bit later. It gives you some options later on. If you don't see this option that says save a copy, it is most certainly because when you install the app and it asked for permission to access all your photos, you said no. You can change that by going into permissions and I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. But for now, I'm just going to hit save a copy. There, then it saved that for me. If I then hit the home button on my iPad, and I go to my Photos app, and I go to my most recent albums, see, I've got a new version of the photo right there. That's the newly edited version that's right there. If I just go back here, you can see the old version is still available right up there, and then this is the new one that's here. If you did need to change your permissions, I'm going to hit the home screen again and go here to settings. You just will need to swipe up until you get to, if you're on a Mac. I'm not. You can also change this on Android, but I'm not sure how you do it exactly, I'm afraid. But you just go here and you go to Snapseed. And then photos. If it doesn't say all photos, just change it to that. If it said none or selected photos, then you won't be able to have the full access to everything that Snapseed allows you to do. Okay, to demonstrate one more photo here. Next one I'm going to bring in, show you a couple other options here. Is this one right here. I shot this in Calgary. The crop option, pretty straightforward. I'm only showing it to you now just because I want to show you something that it does that's a little bit different. So I'm going to switch it to 5x4 because I didn't really like what I did at the bottom there with that sculpture. And then I'm going to hit the check mark. The thing I want to show you that's pretty cool here is this feature they have called Expand. So see the crop is right there. It looks like a normal crop tool. And Expand has got the crop tool with those arrows pointing up to the left and the right. You can see there's a little fill mode that showed up here, which is usually set to smart, which is where you should leave it. This allows you to do, it's a little bit like in Photoshop where you can add additional canvas to your image. So if I just drag that line up there and I let go, it will analyze the image and fill it in, the AI will, and like what it should look like, what it thinks it should look like. It works great for organic things like clouds or grasses or even some trees. It works terrible for human-made things. You can see if I try to add more to the right and the left, it won't do a very good job without those rectilinear lines because it doesn't know what to do with that. But this has saved me in a number of occasions where maybe I just didn't quite shoot it right. I got the person a little bit too close to the edge, or my subject a little bit close to the edge, and I want to extend it just a little bit. Pretty great tool. And like I say, you can do this in Photoshop, but not everyone uses Photoshop. And sometimes it's also really nice just to edit your photos like while you're right on the spot out in the field. Make sure they're going to be what you want, which is one of the things I love about doing mobile photos here. So I'm going to undo that. We don't really need that, but I do want to show you just one other tool. I think mobile photos always need a sharpening. Actually, all photos generally need sharpening. In this case, sharpening is contained up here in details. The second one, you can tell it's sharp because it's got a triangle there. There are actually two tools available here. They are called structure and sharpening. Structure is usually called clarity. It's mid-tone contrast. So if I leave it in structure and I slide my finger to the right, you'll see it brings out a contrast in all the midtones. It gives a little bit of that HDR feeling. What's really cool is you can actually do negative structure and get kind of a smoother look. And I've done this in some photos. Like if I'm trying to get rid of a bunch of footsteps that somebody left in the snow or something, I can do that with this. But what I actually came to show you about this was the sharpening tool. When I'm sharpening, I generally want to kind of double tap so I can see what's happening. And then I'm just going to slide my finger to the right. And I chose this photo because even over Zoom, you should be able to see how that gets sharper when I do that. I can show you the before and the after. It's pretty nice. So I always do that, and it's usually the last step I do on my photos. Okay, one more demonstration, then we're going to do our edit together. If I go to open a photo and I haven't actually saved it, Snapseed is going to be like, hey, wait a minute, you didn't actually save this photo, so you're going to lose it if you do that. So it's nice because it warns you. In this case, I don't care because I don't actually need to save that photo. The last photo I'm just going to give you a demonstration of here is to show one other tool, a couple other tools here in Snapseed. I'm gonna show this water tower. Of course, there's different kinds of flare that we get in our photographs. Some flare we like this beautiful flare around the sun here, and some flare that we don't really like so much, which happens a lot on mobile devices, like this green bit of flare that's there. And that's because, anytime where a photo is subject is backlit and the sun directly hits or a light directly hits our camera's sensor, our iPhone or our phone's sensor, you'll get a little something that looks like that. There's a pretty neat tool here called Healing. It is in the third row here. You see it looks like a couple of Band-Aids. If I tap on that, I'm going to use 2 fingers to kind of zoom in right now. It's a cool tool, but it's a very blunt instrument. It's not very precise. What I'm going to do is just rub my finger over that. And then as soon as I let go, it will try to guess what should be there in its place. So I'm rubbing with my finger and I let go. And it didn't do a great job there, but that's okay because I do it one more time. There, it did a pretty good job on that. If I was unhappy with that, I could undo it and give it another try. For many things, this is great. There, I got it pretty good on that first time. You can also do other things in it as well. Like I think I could probably get rid of all of this over here if I wanted to pretty well because it's surrounded by blue there. There, took me a few tries. I couldn't do things like I couldn't get rid of this one right here. It's not at all precise enough for that. But it's a pretty neat tool. I'm always trying to get rid of that blue-green dot in my photos because I don't really like that. So it's an easy and quick way to get rid of that. Again, I'm gonna hit the check mark here to say I'm happy with it. And then the other thing I just wanted to show you that's available here is there's kind of a neat tool in the black and white tools. Black and white here is in like the 5th row, the 4th column, at least on my iPad. So there are, as you can see, anytime we see our sliders, we can go here, we can see there's different things that we can adjust here. There's also, so brightness, contrast, and green. There's also here a tray of presets. And if we just tap on these, it'll show it and hide the tray. So I can pick one of these presets if I want to have like a specific look, and I can modify it later. Like I could say, well, I like this contrasty look, but maybe it's a little too contrasty. So I can actually just slide the contrast down a little bit. The thing I wanted to show you here is if any of you are old enough to remember shooting black and white film, and you could put a color filter on the front of it to change the look of things, that's available to us here, which is kind of a neat thing. Because of course, making a photo black and white isn't simply desaturating it. Some decisions have to be made about how those colors are rendered in black and white. So depending on whether I click on the red filter or the green or the blue filter, I can get a very different feeling from this same photo just by making it black and white. In this case, I'd probably do something like this because it's a backlit photo. I like that kind of silhouetted look of this water tower that's there. Okay, I am going to do my photo demonstration for you guys. I'm going to show you on my teaching deck here first, and then we can all do it together. So we're going to start with the photo on the left here and end with the photo on the right. And so the things I liked about this photo is I like the human scale that's here. You'll get that tiny person, which is me. I had my iPhone on a tripod, and because I found this cool hill that I really liked. This was in rural Indiana, but I really wanted to have a person there so you had a sense of how big it was. So I had to use another app than just the regular iPhone camera app to shoot because I needed 30 seconds to run there and the timer isn't that long. So because it was pretty far. In fact, there was a lot of shots where I didn't quite make it there. I needed another couple of seconds. So I like that the person's there. I like that there's this symmetrical environment that usually don't find out unless it's a human-made environment. And I like to say the scale, and I like the clouds overhead. What I don't like is I didn't quite get it shot perfectly, right? Like I'm not centered in the photo, and I probably should be centered in order to honor the symmetry that I was trying to capture here. And although I like the blue that's there, it's my favorite color, but I feel like the color is actually not really helping us here. I feel like if anything, it's distracting a little bit from what I really want to show, which is that person. And then I also like these lines, these vertical lines that go, the leading lines that go from the bottom edge of the photo that are in the road. And also this sense of depth. I want to try to increase that sense of depth if I can. So in order to edit that, here's what we are going to do. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly here, and then we'll do it a little more slowly when we all do it as a group. So we're going to bring in the photo as we already saw. We're going to go to Tools. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to crop it, and we're going to make it into a square photo. And once we've made it into a square, then we can just drag that upper corner so that we can get me centered in the photo, get the human centered in the photo. And I'll probably also kind of follow the rule of thirds as well, get that horizon line roughly on the third line, because there's really no reason to not follow that rule in this particular case. Hit the check mark. Then we're going to go to tools. We're going to go to tune image, and we're going to increase the contrast a little bit. Go to tools, and we're going to add a vignette, a tool I haven't shown you yet, but which is pretty neat here in Snapseed, which I'll tell you why it's neat in just a few minutes when we get there. Well, I'll say it right now. It's neat because it has an option to change things on the outside, which is typically how we think of a vignette, but it also has this invisible circle, and you can change things on the inside. And something I will do in a lot of my photos, if it's a perspective shot like this, is in order to get that, increase that feeling of depth, I'll make the outside darker and the inside brighter. It's like a train coming through a tunnel. That always makes things feel a little bit deeper. So by increasing the, by making the outside darker, making a negative outer brightness and a positive inner brightness, I can increase that feeling of depth that's there. I can make it be black and white, and I can play with those color filters that I was talking about, decide if I want to emphasize the clouds that are there or not emphasize them. That's just a matter of personal preference. And then the last step I always do is I sharpen them. So I'll go up here to details, and we'll go to sharpening, increase the sharpening, and hit the check mark, export, and save a copy. So I went through that kind of fast, but let's do it all together here, and we will do it slower. All right, presumably you guys can all see my iPad here once again. So I'm just going to hit X to get out of this. Go to open a new photo. I don't care that I've not saved this. Open from device, albums, and then I'm going to find this photo, which is right there. Oh, before I forget, I meant to say this sooner, but remember I told you the apps that this app has built-in tutorials. They are right up here. If you click on these three little dots in the upper right and you click on tutorials, this very top blue bar here, this is actually a tutorial, even though it doesn't really look like it. And the tutorials are a combination of photographs where they kind of walk through what they do. And then there's even some videos that are here. These tutorials are okay. This app was developed by Nick Software, and then Google bought it, and then Google developed it for a long time, and they really haven't updated the app in a while. So they haven't updated any of these tutorials, but the basic stuff is there for you. Okay, so if you're following along, let us go here to tools. And I can't see anybody, so if somebody's having a problem, I hope you'll just speak up, because otherwise I won't know that you're having a problem. And we go here now to crop. And if this tray doesn't automatically show, you can just click on format here, tap on format in the bottom. That will hide or show the pre-programmed aspect ratios. In this case, we're just going to go square. Then I can move this square around, but you can see because it's got those lines there, I can see that I didn't get the guy centered, which I knew I didn't. So I'm going to move it around till he is centered in the frame, and then decide where I want the horizon line to be. In my case, I'm going to go kind of around there. This is not a right or wrong thing. This is totally a matter of personal preference. All right. If you're happy with that, you hit the check mark. We've done one thing. Let's go here to Tools, and we'll go to Tune Image. And then we'll go here to Adjust. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of contrast to this. I'm going to look at and see what happens if I change the highlights and shadows. If I bring down the highlights a little bit, maybe if I bring the shadows up a little bit, and look at before and after here. I think it's a little bit nicer. So I'm going to do that, even though I didn't do that in my deck to you. So I'm doing this. I'm adding contrast. I'm bringing down the highlights, and I'm bringing up the shadows. We've done two things. All right, let's go to black and white now. So we're here to tools, and then we'll go to black and white. And you can see this automatically applies a preset for you. If you go to the presets, you'll see mine is on the neutral one here. But there's other ones that are available here as well. In this case, I'm just going to leave it at neutral. I think that that's okay. But I'm going to play around with these color filters here. In the sample I showed you, I went with the red filter, and red, orange, and yellow, they will darken the blue sky and kind of emphasize those clouds. You definitely could do that. I could also go here to the green or the blue if I wanted to de-emphasize the clouds. And that, I think, is also a really nice thing. In fact, you could argue that maybe that's a nicer way to edit the photo because it simplifies it further. We have just landscape, human, and sky. And then the sky is made up of, the sky is a little bit more unified looking. Totally up to you. In this case, I think I'm actually going to leave it like this in this particular case. And hit the check mark. All right, let's go learn about vignette, which I talked about, which I showed you, but we haven't learned about yet. Oh. So this only happens to me ever when I'm teaching, where the app crashes on me. It almost never happens in real life. Sorry about that, everybody. Give me 1 second to catch back up with you. So good, you can get a quick review of what we did. Tools. Oops, not expand. Tools. Crop. Oh, it's still in square, so that's good. Center him. Rule of thirds. Check mark. To an image. Contrast. Bring the highlights down a little bit. Bring our shadows up a little bit. Black and white, neutral, blue, check. Okay, now I'm caught back up to you guys. So we're going to go to the vignette tool, which is in the bottom row in mine. You can see this looks a little bit different. It's got this blue dot in the middle here. If you use 2 fingers, you'll see all of a sudden this circle shows up. And that's what I was saying. There's this invisible circle which defines inner from outer in this tool. So if I click on the sliders, you can see what's going on. The default when you first launch it is it makes an outer brightness of -50. But there's also this inner brightness. And if I bring that up, you can see what's happening there. What I always tell my students is if you're unsure what a tool does in Snapseed, bring it to its extreme, and then you'll be able to exactly see what's going on. So I brought it to this to as extreme as I can make it, where I've made the outer brightness be as dark as it can be and the inner brightness be as bright as it can be. And I can make that circle be really small. It's like I've got a little spotlight here. And I can move that circle around by dragging it with my finger, just by dragging that blue dot. So I could do the photo like that. That's probably a little bit insane. This is the idea of what I want, but not just quite that extreme. So I'm going to make that circle be a little bit bigger. Go back down here, make my outer brightness to be maybe not quite so dark. Maybe I'll do like kind of like -38. Make my inner brightness not quite so bright either. And there's not really a right or wrong here. This is where it's really nice to look at the before and the after, so you can kind of see what's happening with the vignette. What I'm looking at is how we get this fading up from the darker part of the road to the brighter part of the road. And I really like that. In this case, I think I'm actually going to make the outer part be a little bit darker still. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to hit the check mark here. And then the last thing we're going to do, last thing that I always do in my photos is I'm going to sharpen the photo. So I'm going to go up here to details. I'm going to go here to adjust and switch from structure, which is the same as clarity, to sharpening. Then I'm going to double tap. And then if I slide my finger to the right, I can see what the sharpening is doing. Of course, Sharpening doesn't actually sharpen. There's no such thing as actually sharpening your photos. What it does is it increases the contrast anytime a light area meets a dark area. So if you go too far, you can see that the guy standing there has got like a white outline around him. So he's over sharpened there. I just kind of did that to show what's happening. In this case, I think I can get away with maybe about +50. If I'm unsure, I'll usually just do like sharpening +30 or 35 and then hit OK on that. And then I'm gonna hit the check mark. What I didn't tell you before is that there's also before and after on the home screen here. If you just push and hold on the home screen, it'll show you before and after. So in a short amount of time, we changed this photo quite a bit. All right, we're not done because we have to actually save it. So I'll hit export here and then save a copy. If I went here and I hit save, it would actually want to change the original photo, and at least in the Mac world, I would get an alert saying, hey, do you want to allow this to modify the original photo? I usually don't do that. Export will do the same thing as save a copy. It'll make a new version of it, but save a copy saves some metadata that allows us to go back and change a photo later on after the fact. Even later on, even like a days or months after we've edited. And I'll show you how that works in just a second here. So that is the gist of the basics of Snapseed. As you can see, there's a ton of other tools there, which is why I teach a 5-hour class. I did want to just briefly show you how there are, if you do save a copy, I could open up this photo tomorrow, and I could go back up here to where the undo is, but I could go down to this tool that's here called View Edits. If I tap on View Edits, now it's showing me layers just like in Photoshop. Well, somewhat similar to Photoshop, where you can see everything that I did to the photo. So here's the original photo. Here's the crop I did on it. Added the contrast, etc. Black and white vignette and details. What's nice about this is I could look at this photo and say like, gosh, I wish I hadn't edited this as square. I don't want to start all over. Well, I can go here into View Edits and go to my crop tool. Click it again, and I'll see I get these little sliders. There's a little trash can, which will delete the crop. But if I hit the sliders, it'll bring me right back into that crop tool where I was before. Then I can switch it and go, maybe I want to make it be a 5x4. Reason I would pick 5x4 is because if I want to post this on Instagram, the largest photo I can post on Instagram is a 5x4 vertical. So I might do it like that. Hit the check mark. Then you can see the other tools are still grayed out above, so I actually have to click on them to reapply them. Then I can go back to the home screen, and then I can export another copy of it. So if I hit the home screen here and I go to my Photos app, see my two most recent photos are the square version that I output and then the 5x4 version. What I like about this is that sometimes you, like I was saying before, you don't always edit in a linear manner going exactly from A to B. Sometimes you have to kind of find your way there. So when I'm editing, I'll sometimes think like, this is a pretty good stopping point for this. So I'm going to export this version and then export a couple other versions and maybe do like 3 or 4 edits. And then I don't know if you guys are anything like me, but I always need to step away from the computer and look at it later, ideally the next day with fresh eyes, so I can see if I actually like my edit or not. Invariably, I found that I've gone too far and I need to back it up just a little bit. That's what allows me to do that. I can go back in and make changes on it later on. We have a few minutes late. I can stay late, especially because we had some technical versions at the problems at the beginning. But I want to know, would people like to ask questions now with the remaining time, or would you like me to demonstrate some more of what the app can do?
Questions from anyone?
Okay.
Sounds like you
I'll
can
do-
continue.
I'll do a little bit more demonstration, kind of show you some of the other things that are available in the app. The home screen here, launch the app one more time. And I'm going to bring in a new photo. I'm going going to introduce you guys to my cat, Franklin. There he is. Okay, so what do I like about this photo? Well, my cat, he's beautiful, right? I like his eyes. I like his pink nose. I like that he's sitting on this chair that's, white. And he's sitting on my coat, which is black, which is why he wanted to sit on that chair. And I like that he's looking right at the camera. I don't like that cherry cabinet that's in my kitchen there because, of course, our eyes always go to the most colorful or the brightest thing in a photo. And that cherry cabinet just kind of steals all the thunder from my beautiful cat. So what I want to do is figure out a way that I can desaturate just that cabinet. Well, there's two ways that I can do that here in Snapseed. We've only talked so far about global editing, but you can also do local editing. The two ways you can do that are with brush here and then the selective tool. I'll show you the brush tool first. Brush tool here, you can see, it's got a tray, and it's got dodge and burn and exposure, with dodge and burn being a cumulative effect, and exposure being anytime you adjust it, it's exactly by either a third, 2/3, or a full stop. You can also change the color temperature, yellow or blue, and then how much saturation there is in a certain part of the photo. In this case, I'm going to go here to saturation because that's what I want to get rid of. See, it says +10 at the bottom. Well, I don't want to increase the saturation. I want to decrease it. So I'm just going to tap on this. And for some reason, they decided that the intervals will be +10, +5, eraser, -5, -10. I don't know why they did that instead of doing 100 and whatever. This is what they picked. So I'm at -10 here. And now I can just simply rub my finger over this cherry cabinet at the top. And as I rub my finger over it, see, it just desaturates the color in that right there. Now, if you had never seen this photo, you wouldn't even know that had been, you just think that was like a light gray cabinet that was in the background there. So that's pretty nice. I can also use 2 fingers to zoom in. You can see when I zoom in, this little circle appears there and allows us to see exactly how big our quote unquote brush is, which is our finger. So I could go here to Franklin's eyes and I could maybe increase the saturation a little bit in them. Maybe I can increase the saturation in his cute little pink nose. There, I kind of overdid that a little bit, but I'll go here to eraser and I'll get rid of that. Now, this also has the ability to, if I draw like with my finger in places where I didn't mean to, you can't really tell, or sometimes it's hard to tell. So it also will show you a mask so you can see exactly where you have drawn with that tool. So it turns out this pink color, which is pretty nice. So I can see like, oh, actually I have a bunch of stray marks I didn't want. So I can just erase them here. And you just toggle that on and off by using the mask. I could also do other crazy things in here as well if I wanted to. Like I could go here to the temperature and I could make this eye be yellower. I could go over to this other eye, make this eye be bluer. And like I say, what I like about this tool, there's no radial gradient like there is in Lightroom, which is awesome. There's no way to do that, but I do like how you kind of just get your fingers in there, and in many ways, it's pretty intuitive like that. You don't have the same degree of control, but you can do quite a bit right in this app. So that's number one. I'm going to undo that because we don't want to actually make poor Franklin look that crazy. The other tool that's available here is one that's a little bit tricky to use, but it's worth it. It's called the selective tool. What this does, this works differently than any other tool I've described to you so far. When you come to this tool, it's like waiting for you to add a control point to it. And then you tell what you want to happen in that control point. So if I tap up here in this orange cabinet, in the cherry cabinet, you can see this little B appears and it says brightness. Well, what you don't know is that there's a hidden menu that you can't see that you get to by just sliding up your finger on the screen. So if I slide here and go to saturation, and then you use 2 fingers to just select just the whole, make sure I get the whole cabinet. Now, if I slide my finger to the left, it'll desaturate everything that's there. The way this works is it works by having whatever's underneath that red, those little red cross is what it's going to affect. So if I put it down here on Franklin's nose, now it's going to just desaturate his nose. I'll put it back up here on the cabinet because we want to get rid of the cabinet that's there. What's nice about this tool is that there's other tools that are available within it. So for instance, and you can also add more than one control point. So if I zoom, oops, I gotta actually untap to deactivate that control point. Then I can zoom in here, I can add another control point, and I'll put it right in Franklin's eye there. Didn't quite get in the right spot. And in this case, his green is a little bit close to his gray fur, so it doesn't quite do a perfect job of picking it out. But the reason I want to show you this is I can go in here, and in addition to brightness and contrast, I've also got structure, which like I said is clarity. So I can bring out some of kind of the detail in his eye that's there. And if I show you before and after, I did quite a bit there, so I did a little bit extreme. I can also copy this control point and then just paste it over here on his other eye. I'm using 2 fingers to kind of bring that down. There, I'll zoom out. So if I show you, I can just click down hide here and actually hide the control points. So you can see, like with this one tool, I've desaturated the cabinet, and then I've also increased the contrast and structure in his eyes there, which is pretty nice. So those are just some of the ways that you can do some localized editing in Snapseed. Since you guys couldn't see it at the very beginning here, let's go back to my classes. So if you're interested, you can take more classes from me, or you can just contact me. My email information, I think Steve should be able to give you that, or you can just find it on my website. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about Snapseed or about anything else. So as far as this goes, like I say, I'm happy to stick around a little bit longer if people have other things that they want to talk about. Otherwise, if you need to go, thank you very much for coming today.
I see one question in the chat.
Okay, let me go there.
Where have you tried LR Mobile?
Lightroom Mobile, it's very similar. Yeah, Lightroom Mobile is really nice. And it has other tools that aren't available in Snapseed. Yeah, the reason I teach Snapseed in my classes is that I'm usually teaching beginners who have never worked with Lightroom. And unless you have an Adobe account, all the tools in Lightroom Mobile aren't available to you. Many of them are, and it's pretty great. So yeah, it's a fantastic tool, and I really like that as well.
I don't hear any other questions. This has been great, Eric. I've learned a ton. Thank you very much for your expertise and your creativity, and very well done.
Thank you all for coming tonight. It was nice to meet all of you, and I hope you all have a lovely evening and stay cool.
Thanks, Eric. I will